Hello everyone, welcome to the Mercury Virtual. Hope you are doing good. Today I am going to continue with the new module that I've started yesterday, but there is no student available yesterday, so I have not covered two topics of the new module. So let's start with the new module. Let's start with the beginning of the new module. Today Benjamin is available as a student. So how are you, Benjamin, first of all? So let's start with the session. Let's start with a new module, that is Office Solutions Development. So let's begin with the module. This is a module that is related with how to develop the Office solutions. What are the various codes? What are the various programming languages that is used? Yes, Benjamin, how are you? I'm also good. Thanks for asking, Benjamin. So Benjamin, this is a new module, right? All right. So that is a office solution, that is the office solution development, that is how to develop the office's solutions that is available, that is introduction to the office solution. So there are three basic patterns of office solution in this. So this module is related to what are the various steps, what are the various programming languages that is used to develop, that is used to carry on, or that is used to carry on the office solution, that is used to carry on the develop the office solutions, right? So in this module we are going to cover what are the various three basic operations of the office solutions. This is one PDF, and we also shared some other PDF also for the office solution development, that is the PPTs, not the PDF. Now we are going to share the PPTs, but this is the first module or first content, that is the basic contents of the office solution development. The three basic patterns of the office solutions are as follows. Now, what you understand the basic pattern of the office object model. This chapter explains how developers pattern and build their office solution. That is, what are the basic patterns of the office models, or what are the basic pattern that is available for the office object models. Now, this chapter explains how the developer patterns and build their office solution, that is how they develop, how they going to verify about the office solutions. And most solutions built using office follow one of the three patterns. So there are three patterns that they follow, whatever, whether they may be organization, that may be an individual, that makes the basic pattern, that makes the solution as a feasible, that makes the solution as a worthy or trustworthy to develop the office solution, that is developed out of the three available patterns. First is the office automation executable, that is a executable file will be created, that is a exe file will be created, that is known as the executable file. So that is office automation executable. Then next is office add-ins, that is office add-in means adding quality will be used for the office add-ins, that is additional software, additional content that may be used for the add-ins. Then next is the code behind an office development or office document. So what is the main code that is that is studying in an that is written in any programming language, that is maybe a Visual Studio, that may be anything. So what is the code that is behind the open or behind the office document? So first of all, there is an automation executable, that is a program that separates from the office, that control and automates an office application. So its executable is a program that separate from the office, so that is separate from the office, that controls. So this is executable controls and automate an office application. So that means how to control and how to automate an office application. An automation executable can be created with the development tools such as Visual Studio. So whatever the automation executable, whatever the tool that is created, with the development tool such as the Visual Studio. A typical example is a standalone console application or Windows Forms application that start up an office application, then automates it to perform some tasks. So whatever the task, whatever the rule that is considering, that consider the office application and automates the work that is done, that is to perform some task. And to start a solution, that means a typical example that is given is a Standalone console application. What do you mean by the standalone console application? That requires an application, that is an application that start up an office application, that is an office application that is used, that makes the automated work, so that automate it to perform some task. So if I want to perform some task, that is used by the automation of the task. So to start a solution built this way, the user of the solution starts the automation executable. So first of all, the automation executable will be carried on, which in turn start up the office application. So first of all, exe file will be carried on, will be sold. Then after the exe files, there is a office solution that is going on with the office development. Unlike the other patterns, so unlike the other two patterns, the automation code does not run in the office process. So unlike the other pattern that is available, this code, that is the automation code, does not run in the office process, but runs in its own process and talks across the process, or talks cross process to the process or to the office process being automated. So whatever the office process, whatever the tool that is available, that is used to cross the processes to the office process that is being automated. So this is automated tool that does not run in the office process. An add-in is a class in an assembly, that is a DLL, that office loads and creates when needed. So whenever it is needed, that add-in facility will be available that loads the office, or that office loads and creates when needed. That is a add-ins, that is a DLL. An add-in runs in process with the office application instead of requiring its own process. That means add-in runs in the process with the office application. So it's a facility, it's an add-in tool that is available with the office application, that is available with the office application process. So to start a solution build this way, the user of the solution starts the office application that is associated with the add-in. So whatever the application, whatever the tool that is required for the office application, instead of requiring the tool, instead of giving the tool, and Office detects the registered add-in on the startup and the load the them. So first of all, Office takes, or Office check whether the application that is used is the add-in application that is available, that is used with the code behind it. So whether that application is registered or not, or there is a registered add-in or not. If the registered add-in, then the Office executable code will be load, or will load it up into the scenario, will load it up into the Office development. However, code behind the document unloads when the document associated with the code is closed. So whenever the code behind when the code is used as an unload code, or when the code document unload when the document associated with the code. So whatever the document that is prepared, when the document associated with the code is closed, an add-in can remain loaded throughout the lifetime of the Office application. So that remains loaded, or that remains loaded throughout the lifetime of the Office application. So this paragraph simply says that whenever the add-in is required, so it loads and creates the page. So when the add-in is registered, so it will make that code effective, that will make the Office application, instead of requiring its own process separate from the Office application process. And to start a solution built this way, the user of the solution start the Office application instead of using the add-ins. Then after using the add-ins, after getting the add-ins that is required, then load the add-ins that is used with the Office application, and also load the code that is behind, that is used behind the document. Now, the code behind the pattern was popularized by the Visual Basic for application. So which code is used for the various application? The code that is used for the applications is the VBA. That is a Visual Basic for application, that is the VBA code. that is a Visual Basic for the applications. That is a simple development environment that is included with the Office that enables the developer to write the VB code, that is the Visual Basic code, against the object model of a particular Office application. So whatever the Office application that is required, that is used with the Office application that is used with the object model of a particular Office application, and associate that code with a particular document or template. Associate that code with a particular template that is used, that is available. A document can be processed with C# or Visual Basic code behind using Visual Studio. So whatever the Visual Studio that is required with the content that is used with the Visual Studio. So whatever the code that is used, that is code that is used behind the pattern that was popularized by the Visual Basic for the application. So what is the VBA? That is a Visual Basic for the application. That is a Visual Basic code that is simple development environment that is included with the Office that enables the developer to write the Visual Basic code against the object model of a particular Office application. So whatever the application, whatever the development code that is used, that is enables the developer to write the Visual Basic code against the object model of a particular Office application. So the code will be written in the Visual Basic against the object model of a particular Office application, and associate that code with a particular document or template. So whatever the code, whatever the associated code that is used, that is required with the particular document or the template. A document that can be associated with the C# or Visual Basic code behind Visual Studio 2005 tools for Office. So whatever the tool that is required, that is a VSTO, that is the Visual Studio tools for the Office, that is the 2005, that can be associated with the C# or the VB, that is the Visual Basic code. So whatever the document that is associated with the VB or the C#, that is using the code that is used behind any Visual Studio 2005. And to start a solution built this way, the users of the solution opens a document that has a code behind it and creates a new document from a template that has a code behind it. That means they are using the template, they are using the code that is used with it, and also creates a new document that is used with the template that has a code behind it. And the code that is associated with the document or behind the document will customize the Office application in some way while it is open. So whenever the code has written the examination, or whenever the code has written in the VB, that code will be available, that code will be used with a document environment with the code, that is it creates a new document from a template. So whatever that document that is used, they are also accessed with the use of the templates. The code behind the document will customize the Office application in some way while the document is open. So whatever the code that is written in the VB, that is available or that is able to customize the Office application in some way while the document is in open stage. For example, code behind the document might add menu items that are only present when the document is open, or associate the code. That means the code behind the document. So if the VB code is written in a document, that is going to add the menu item that are only present when the document is open. So when the document is open, they are going to open the menu items and associate the code with the events. So if the associated code is used with the events that occurs while the document is open. While the document is in open stage, that the associated code that is written in the VB that occurs, that executes while the document is open, and it executes or add the new menu item that is available in the VB code. We discuss two advanced patterns later in this book. The server document patterns involved. So whatever the server document that is used, that involves the two patterns, that involves the two criteria by which the server maintains the document. Now there are two patterns that is available in this book. So the server document pattern involves running code on a server. So if it is a server based scenario, that means the code will run on the servers to manipulate the data stored in an Office document without starting the Office application. So if the document will not start, or the document is not manipulated till the Office application without using the or without starting the Office application, that runs the code on a server to manipulate the data stored in an office development. So whatever the office code, whatever the office development that takes place in an office development without starting the office application. So the server document pattern involves running code on a server to manipulate the data stored in an office environment. Now VSTO, that is a Visual Studio tool for the office, makes this scenario possible through a feature known as a cached data. So Visual Studio tool that is used for the office makes the cache data as an important feature. So if I'm going to tell you that what is the main feature of the VSTO, the main feature that is available is the cache data. Chapter number 18, that is the server data scenarios discussed in this pattern. Now come to the next part, that is the hosted code. So whatever the add-in code that is used, so the add-in and the code that is used behind the pattern are known as the hosted code. That is, if I'm going to use the add-in code, if I'm going to use the add-in application and the code that is used in behind the add-in application, that are known as the hosted code, which means that your code runs in the same process as the office application. That is the hosted code. The add-in and the code behind patterns are sometimes known as the hosted codes. As the name advises, the add-in, that is the application, and the code, that is the hidden code or the behind code that is available, that is sometimes known as the hosted code. That means that your code runs in the same process as the office application. Now, discovery of the hosted code. Who discovered the hosted code, or how you discover the hosted code? So for the code to run in the office application process, so if I want to run the code in the office application process, the office application must be able to discover your code. So for making the code, or for running the code in the office application process, the office application must be able to discover your code. So first of all, office application discover the code, load the code into the process space, and then your code. So whatever the application that is required, that is available in the office application process, so office application must be able to discover your code, load the code into the process space, and run your code. Office add-ins are registered in the Windows registry so that the office can find and start them. So whatever the office code that is required in the office stage, that is required with the office application tool that is used to discover the code. So for the code to be run, the first step is running the office application that must be able to discover the code, that loads the code into the process space and run the code. So first of all, office application discover the code, then load the code into the process space and run the code. Office add-ins are registered in the Windows registry so that the office can find and start them. So whatever the add-ins that are required, that are registered in the Windows registry, so that the office can find and start the process that is required with the office add-ins. Using the registry seems a little non.NET, but this is necessary because Office 2003 talks to add-ins if they were COM objects through the COM interop. So that means this is the important line. So if a add-in will be required, that is a .NET add-in that is used, that is a necessary because 2003 talks to add-ins if they were COM object through the COM interop. The code behind the document pattern does not require a registry entry. So whatever the code that is required, that is used behind the document pattern, that does not require a registry entry. Instead, the code is associated with the document by adding some special properties to the document file. So if there is some special property that is required, that is used with the add-in properties, that is used with the special properties to the document file. Office reads these properties. So whatever the additional properties that is given, so Office read or read these files, that is the Office document. These properties when the document open, then the Office loads the code associated with the document. That means first of all, Office read the code or read the document, discover the code, then Office loads the code associated with the document. So whatever the code that is associated with the document, that is loaded with the document. So that is a discovery of the hosted code that is required in the Office application process. That means hosted code means a hidden code that is registered under the Windows registry so that the office can find and start them. The code behind a document pattern do not require or does not require registry entry. Instead, the code is associated with the document by adding some special properties to the document. That is the discovery of the hosted code. Next is context provided to the hosted code. That is what is the main context that is provided to the hosted code. So it is critical that your hosted code get context. So it is very critical, means it is a very tough process that your hosted code, that is your hidden code or your code will be or will get context. It needs to get the application object, that is it needs to get the obj, that is object application or the application object or the document object for this or for the application or office application into which it is loading. So whenever they are using the hosted code, that is using the context, it needs to get the application object, that is the hosted code, so that is used to get the application object or the document object for the application or office application that is used, that is loading in this one. COM add-ins are provided with the context through an interface implemented by the add-in class. So whatever the add-in class that is used, so that is used with the interface that is implemented by the add-in class. Outlook add-in in VSTO are provided with the context through a class that is created in the project. So if there is a VSTO class that is provided with the context that is used with the class or that is used through a class that is created in the project that represent the application that is being customized, that is VSTO, that is a Visual Studio for Office applications. This is one of the important line then that needs the that it whenever they are using the hosted code, that it need to get the application object or the document object for the office application into which it is loading. COM add-ins are provided with the context through an interface implemented by the add-in class. Outlook add-in in VSTO are provided with the context through a class created in the project that represents the application being customized. So whatever the application that is customized, that is used with the VSTO. And the code behind the document in VSTO is provided with the context through a class created in the project that represents the document being customized. So whatever the document that is being customized, that is representing the code that represents the document that is being customized. That is whatever the context that is provided to the hosted code that is being customized as per the user requirement. The next is entry point for hosted code. So one is the context that is provided to the hosted code. Then next is the entry point. So first is how to discover. So these are the main point, that is a hosted code, that is discovery first of all. Then able to load, that is whatever the context that is provided. Then what is the entry point for the hosted code. So at startup, Office calls into an entry point where your code can run for the first time. So this is the scenario, this is the entry point that your code can run for the first time and register for the events that might occur later in the session. So at the startup phase, the Office calls into the entry point where your code can run for the first time. So at the starting phase, Office calls into the entry point, Office go into the entry point where your code can run for the first time. That means code can run for the first time and register for events that might occur later in the session. So if there is an event, that is registered for the event that might occur later in the session. For a COM add-in, the entry point or this entry point is on connection method of IDTE. That is for whatever the COM connection, whatever the COM add-in that require the entry point is on connection method of IDTE extensibility to interface that is implemented by the COM add-ins. That is the on connection method that is developed, that is required by the IDE, that is the integrated development technology extensibility 2 that implement the COM add-in. So COM add-in is also available with the scenario, with the suitability that requires the code. So at the startup, Office calls into the entry point where a code run can run for the first time and register for the event. For a VSTO Outlook add-in and VSTO code behind a document, this entry point is the startup event handler. That is a startup event handler that is available, that use the code that makes the entry point as a startup event handler. That is the entry point for hosted code. Next is how the code gets run after the setup. So first discover the code, then context is provided to the code, then entry point for the hosted code. Then the next step is how the code gets run after the startup. So after starting up, how the code will run or how the code will execute. So after hosted code startup, the hosted code continues to run in one of the following of three, or in one or more of the following ways. So there are multiple methods that is used in this one. Now, first is code runs in response to the event raised by the office. So if there is an event that is run, so if there is an event handler that is available, so that is the code run in response to the event raised in the or raised by the office. So the most common way that code runs after startup is in response to the event that occurs in the office application. So if there is an event that occurs in the office application that requires the or that manage the processes that occurs in the office application that occurs in the office scenario, that is in response to the event. So whatever the event that is available, whatever the event that is provided, that is startup, or that event will be startup, or that event will be used or raised by the office. For example, Office raises events when a document opens or a cell in a spreadsheet changes. This is one of the important points. If I'm using the Office, so one of the event that raise, so the event raised when the events, so Office raises the event when a document will be opened in MS Word, that is a document will be opened, or a cell in a spreadsheet changes. So if any cell in a spreadsheet changes, so Office also raises the event of Office also raises the alarm. Listening or listing 1 to 24 shows a simple class that listens to the active event that Excel worksheet object raises. So if any Excel worksheet object that raises, so that list out 1 to 24 event that shows a simple class that listen to the active event that Excel worksheet object raises. That means there are 1 to 24 event that occurs into the or that listen into the active event that Excel worksheet object raises. That is a listing 1 to 24 events. Typically, you will look up or you will hook up event listeners. That is, what is an event listener? Such as the one shown in the listing 1 to 24 when the entry point of your code is called. So this is one. This is the simple. Whenever we have studied about the C language, there is a function called calling and the function call. Whenever the function is called, that is done by the calling function, that is the code runs in response to the event that is raised by the office. That means in this event also, the Visual Studio also, the office will be raised or the code will be run in response to the event raised by the office. And one of the most common way that the code runs after the startup in response to the event that occurs in the office application. So whatever the way that is required, that is used with the office application, that is a startup process that is used in response to the events that occurs in the office application. For example, the office raises the events when a document opens. So if a document opens or a cell in a spreadsheet changes, in that case also the office raises an event. Listing 1 to 24 shows a simple class that listens to the active event that Excel worksheet object raises. Typically, you will hook up event listener such as the one shown in the listing 1 to 24 when the initial entry point of your code is called. Next is interface method called on the object provided to the office. That is how to the interface or the interface method that get coded. This I'm taking after the break. So let's take a break right now, then move to this. What are the various interface methods or what are the various methods that provides the interface to the office? That is the object interface method called on object provided to the office. So let's take a break right now, then move to this topic, that is the interface methods. What are the various interface methods? So come back from the break And let's start the session again. So next part is the discovery of the hosted code, that is how to discover what is the hosted code. So whatever the code that is run in the Office application process, the Office application must be able to discover the code, load the code into the process space and run your code. That means first of all discover where is the code, then load the code into the process space and then run your code. Office add-ins are registered in the Windows registry so that the Office can find and start them. That is add-ins or applications are available in the Windows so that the Office can find and start them. And using the registry seems a little non.NET, but this is necessary because 2003 Office 2003 takes to add-ins as if they were COM objects through the COM interrupt. So they are using the COM interrupt. They are using the COM interrupt, that is using the hosted code, mm, that is used as an add-in, that is used to discover the hosted code. And the code behind the document pattern does not require a registry entry. So if the code that is used behind the document pattern that does not recover or that does not require a registry entry. Instead, the code is associated. So if the code is associated with it, so instead the code is associated with the document by adding some special properties to the document file. That means the code behind the document pattern is not available, does not require a registry entry, but instead of this they are requiring the document file, they are requiring, or the document is code is associated with the document by applying or by adding some special properties to the document file. Office reads these properties when the document opens. So whenever the document will be opened, so Office read out that properties and then the Office loads the code associated with the document. So Office read out that property, then Office loads the code, or Office submit the code, loads the code that is associated with the document. Next is what is the context that is provided to the hosted codes. It is critical that your hosted code get context. It need to get the application object. That means it need to get the application of that object that is carried out, or the document object. There are two objects, either that will be object application or document object, or the document object or the application object for the Office application into which it is loading. That means the hosted code can get loaded into the application object or the document object for the Office application into which it is loading. And the COM add-ins are provided with the context to an interface implemented by the add-in class. So if there is add-ins that is provided, that are provided with the context through an interface that is implemented by the add-in class. Outlook add-ins in VSTO are provided with the context through a class created in the project. So whatever the class that is available with the VSTO, that is provided with the context through a class that is created in the project that represents the application being customized. So if the application is customized as per the requirement, that is customized with the class that is created in the channel that is created with the customized manner. The code behind the object or behind the document in VSTO is provided with the context. So if any code that is used behind the VSTO is provided with the context. So code is also provided with the context through a class that is created in the project that represents the document being customized. So if there is any document that is customized, that is created in the project that represents the document being customized, that is the context provided to the hosted code, that is VSTO. The next is the entry point for the hosted code. That what is the main entry point for the hosted code? So at the startup, the Office calls into the entry point. So whenever there is a startup, that is a Office code into the entry point. That is Office gets into the entry point. And for the COM add-ins, this entry point is the on connection method of the IDTE extensibility. So for the COM add-ins, if there is a COM add-in that is available, the entry point that is available is the on connection method. So availability, or we can say the entry point that is available, is the on connection method of the IDTE extensibility to interface implemented by the COM add-ins. So if there is a COM add-in that is required, that is increased or that is enhanced by using the extensibility, that is known as the IDTE. That is a integrated development technology or the tools and extensibility to interface implemented by the COM add-ins. So for the COM add-ins, this entry point is the on connection method of the ITTE to interface implemented by the COM add-in. For a VSTO Outlook add-in, so if there is a VSTO Outlook add-in and VSTO code behind a document, this entry point is the startup event handler. This entry point is a startup event handler that is available, that is a IDTE, that is a integrated development extensibility that is implemented by the COM add-ins. And for a VSTO Outlook add-ins and the VSTO code behind a document, this entry point is the startup event handler. That is a startup event handler that is available with the VSTO code that is used with the code behind in the startup event handler. That is the entry point for hosted code. Now next topic is how the code gets run after the startup. So after the starting of how the code gets run. This topic I am going to take within the next class, that is the tomorrow's class. That's all for today's session, and thank you so much everyone for listening me. In the tomorrow's class I am taking the next topic, that is how the code gets start up. Oh sorry, how the code gets run after the startup. So after starting up, after getting the hosted code, how the code will run, or the how the code will or gets run. So this is the one of the part that is used, that is the Visual Studio is used for recording the run. Then this is the interface methods. Then what are the various events that is based on the code behind the class. Then the how the code gets unloaded. So once it is loaded, then how